Todd Monken is talking the talk, but can he walk the walk? That's what we find out in the months ahead, and we'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, and proudly covering you Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. There is one first-round wide receiver that the Browns should probably stay away from. Plus, trading down is not some boogeyman that many think it is. And Todd Monken is very much talking the talk. What we need to find out now is if he can walk the walk. And that is where we start the show today, because I was able to on Wednesday talk a little bit about some of what Todd Monken discussed in his first presser of the offseason program beginning. Talked about Miles not being there and how, attendance is voluntary, but, he's excited to be around the guys again and start building his culture. And that sort of plays into what we want to get into. Talked about the quarterbacks. I read between the lines on the description of what he's basically looking for in a quarterback, or how they're going to determine who the number one quarterback is. And to me, it continues to point to Shedeur Sanders. But there were some other things said in one clip in particular that I know got people very excited, because it was classic Todd Monken being Todd Monken, Todd Monken being himself, being candid, being sort of an open book, showing his personality, and, pushing back a little bit on what it's going to take to change some of the narratives about him, about the organization, so on and so forth. And so I'm going to play this here in a second. But what I gather from this clip, and really from just the handful of times we've had a chance to talk to Todd Monken to this point, is that he checks the box of being able to talk the talk. He checks the box of a guy who is going to come in and know when to call them out, when something needs to be said by the head coach, how to hold them accountable, but also can be measured in certain responses. And I know people like when a coach can be forthright in that way, but we've also had other coaches here that act that way or give off that same persona and personality, and then it hasn't worked out. And so the job now for Todd Monken is to walk the walk. I want to play this clip, and what's notable about this is that he understands that the work starts now, and there's one thing that changes the perception of him, as many think he could be a one and done coach, the perception of the organization, and that starting in the spring program right now is how they build towards that in the future.
But do you feel like you got, a disproportionate amount of the bluster for that?
Oh, I really don't give a shit. I mean, it had nothing to do with me. I mean, they moved the meeting. I didn't miss it. I was just trying to get a sweet haircut. I mean, that's what I was trying to do. And then they moved the meeting. Now, you can blame that I should have been at the meeting when they moved it up, and my ass would have known that's when it was. Yeah, okay, I got you. And was it disappointing? Bet your ass it was disappointing. Would my life to be a head coach? I'm not in the head coach's picture. You'd think with AI they could have done that quickly and got me in there. But no, it's the way it is. It'll be under the bridge, and what'll matter most is how we move from here and do we win or not. That ultimately, none of that will matter.
The reason I asked is that there's this perception around the Browns, like, what can go wrong, will go wrong. People always read the worst into what happens here. How can you guys change that perception?
Winning. What changes everything, right? Winning changes everything, right? I told the coaches that the other day, right? Or playing well. How does a player stop a narrative? Play well. How do we stop a narrative on offense? Score. How do you stop a narrative of winning? Win. It's pretty freaking simple, right? I mean, is that not life in general, right? There is a narrative out there that, you're not a good husband. Well, be a good husband, right? All that's part of it, right? Change the narrative, become that. That's what we have to do. It's real simple.
For what it's worth, I don't think that be a good husband line was aimed at any of his coaching colleagues, given some other things going on in the NFL circles right now. But the main overarching point from his commentary, it's two things. It's A, this was a classic example of Todd Monken being Todd Monken. and being able to candidly go out and speak his true feelings on things. As we've talked about already, he's a far cry from Kevin Stefanski, who kept everything very close to the vest, wasn't emotional in that way. And so I think that is refreshing for people, and it can be a good thing that he's willing to hold guys accountable and call guys out and do all that. I do wonder if the team is 4-10 at some point next season and they're losing a lot of games, or even if they're 1-5 to start the year or something like that, if how quickly maybe that persona changes, that approach changes. Can he do that when his team is losing? We'll find out. And that's going to be sort of the fun experiment with Todd Monken and how he handles his first job as a head coach. So we'll see. But for now, at least, it is refreshing. The larger thing, though, in all this is that he understands what has to happen from here. It can't just be this guy who comes in with all this bluster and comes in talking about holding guys accountable and comes in saying those things, and then it's not backed up with the performances on the field by his team. He has to. His team has to perform. They have to win. And the only way that there's going to be narratives and perceptions changed about him when it comes to what he can be as a head coach, getting a job for the first time at the age of 60, the only way that they can change the perception about the Browns and the direction that they're heading and the culture that's here, that he's now trying to be the next coach to come in and finally change and right and get going in the right direction, is if they go out and win football games. And it's good that he knows that and acknowledges that. Now they have to put it into action on the field, at practice, during the spring here, building up towards the summer, and then obviously training camp, and then the regular season. But it starts now. And that is what really, like, this time of year especially is about. It's about finding out how Todd Monken's going to run his practices, how he's going to handle the locker room, how his staff is going to handle certain guys, the temperament they have for players, how they're getting the most out of them. He talks a lot about trying to put guys in the right position to be successful. He talks a lot about setting guys up for success and how they're in the development business as coaches. How is he doing that? How is he maximizing the potential of his players, of his entire team? And that's what we have to kind of learn here in the coming weeks and months. And it'll set the stage for how 2026 goes. But he's 100% right. Like, winning cures all those things. Winning cures the questions. Winning cures the doubts about him. Winning cures the ripping of the team and thinking that they're never going to get out of their own way. And so it's on him and his staff to change those things. The big question is he the guy to finally do that? Because, again, we've had other coaches come in with the same approach and vibrato as he has, and it hasn't worked. I'm not saying it can't work with Todd Monken, and I think, again, he's refreshing, and I love listening to him talk about football, about how he goes about things, his philosophies. He's awesome, and like I said, a breath of fresh air. But now it's about getting down to business and showing it on the field. And the comments were made in jest sort of about the haircut situation, but he knows, and it's good that he knows, that, you know, he can say whatever he wants right now. He can miss haircuts right now. If they're winning, those things become footnotes, and that's the most important thing here at the end of the day. Now we find out if he has what it takes to put together a team and build a team and coach a team that can complete that task and win enough football games that make those things matter way less and actually finally change the culture here in Cleveland. That's what he's tasked with, and we'll see. So, right approach, I think, right now, and it's good to hear. Will it last if the team's losing? I don't know. And it's up to Todd to sort of prove that he is the right man for this job, and that he can change what's been known and said and whatever about this organization in the past. And that's what they're working towards now. The onus is on him to take the reins from here and show that it's not just talking the talk, it's also walking the walk. I know that people seem to be against trading back for some reason. I find it crazy that in the year of our Lord 2026, it's trading back as some sort of boogeyman. I'm going to try to talk you off the ledge coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and you get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one singular place. Plus, during the playoffs, there's extra insight that really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments of every single game. Listen, the Cavs, according to FanDuel, have the 5th best odds to take home the NBA championship. Yes, that's right, the 5th best odds, and the 2nd best odds in the East behind only the Boston Celtics. If you're feeling like the Cavs have a chance to make a run, they made the trade for James Harden. Can they get over the top? Now is your chance to cash in and potentially get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It makes the entire playoff experience more engaging when you're watching along with FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. All right, so I know that as we talk through different draft scenarios, I've seen some people express resentment towards trading back. And I just don't know why in 2026 people still can't comprehend trading back and why it invokes so much anger in people. I want to try to talk you off the ledge a little bit here. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I do want to remind you about the Everydayer Club. It is your chance to get Locked On Browns ad-free on the audio side, wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whichever app or platform you prefer. You also get access to a members-only Discord channel. We can interact with me, other hosts from around the network, talk some smack, whatever you want to do. It's just $5 a month at LockedOnBrowns.supercast.com to sign up today. Thank you for those of you already part of the Everydayer Club. Thank you for those considering joining. Get the show ad-free right now at LockedOnBrowns.supercast.com. So for some reason, the idea and the concept of trading back is just this boogeyman in the closet that people can't wrap their heads around, and that invokes still a lot of anger. And I don't really understand why, because we've seen this go on now for over a decade, multiple decades, that it's a legitimate draft strategy that works and leads to maximizing the value of the pick, which is the thing, by the way, that Andrew Berry continues to point to, and that other teams have executed beautifully as well. So I guess I just have a hard time understanding why some people are so afraid of it. And maybe that's not you, but maybe it is you. And I just don't get it. Like, maybe it's the PTSD of the Browns screwing up that strategy in the past, which I get. There's certainly been times in the course of this franchise's history where they traded back, made a bad pick, and then didn't make a good pick with the pick that they got in return the next year, if it was like a future first or something like that. And so I understand where that thought process comes from, where that fear comes from, and from that degree. But we also have the most recent example of them trading back a year ago, deciding to pass on Travis Hunter to give him to the Jaguars, getting extra draft capital last year and this year. And at least as far as the picks they got last year went, they maximized those. They used the extra second to get Quinshon Judkins. They have a first now this year that they can use however they decide to use it at 24. Maybe it becomes packaged in a deal to move up or whatever. Maybe they actually select a player there. We'll see. But they have a chance to still kind of cash in on the value of that trade that they made last year. And that's ultimately what this is all about. I've talked ad nauseum about Andrew Berry's comments on this and how he continues to say philosophically how they feel about the draft and every pick that they have. And that their number one strategy with every pick is to maximize the value of the pick that you have. That might mean, hey, there's a player here that we really want, really need. He's that good. Let's take him. But it might also mean trading back. And if that's the philosophy that they take, if that's the strategy, it makes sense. It's not something that has to be something that scares people or makes you nervous or that you get mad at because they're not drafting players. Listen, I've been the guy banging the drum for at some point you got to use premium picks on on offensive players, so I get it. But that's the other part of this too, is like year to year the draft is so different. And I don't really get like the banging and pounding the table for certain players in this draft. That maybe that's another thing we can talk about on another episode more in depth on that point specifically. But the consensus in this draft is that there's only a couple guys that are blue chip players. And look, if Jeremiah Love is there at 6, I know people are going to be mad about that. But that's the other thing too. For the number of people who seem afraid or against trading back are also like, I wouldn't draft Jeremiah Love at 6, even though the other team building strategy that teams can deploy is best player available. And he would without question be the best player available at 6 if he's there because of how talented he is. And he is a consensus blue chip guy in this class. Number 2 overall prospect for most of the draft analysts out there and the experts out there who have people in the league that they talk to get their information. Like, if he was there at 6, he'd be the best player available, but you wouldn't want him. So it's kind of funny how it's like, well, you got to take good players, but no, not that good player. But you also can't trade back. So what is it? Is it just they take the guy that you think they need to take? Is it just the one player that you have in mind for them that they have to take at that specific spot? Because I don't get that. Like, there's more than one way to skin a cat here. There's multiple routes that the Browns can take, and the drop off from the top 5 to 6 players to then that next tier of players who are going to go like between 9 and 15 isn't so drastic that if they traded back into that range, I think they'd still end up coming away with a really good player that you can feel good about and maximize the value of that pick, as Andrew Berry talks about, by potentially getting future draft capital or more draft capital this year to use to fill out the roster. And when you're a young team, by the way, when you're a team going through a bit of a rebuild, especially on one side of the ball, it makes sense to get more draft capital, take more bites at the apple. Again, I understand if you're fearful and you don't trust Andrew Berry, if you feel like last year was a cosmic fluke and he hit on a bunch of guys and good for him, but I don't trust it, and you see the history of the Browns missing on picks, but more bites at the apple is never a bad thing. More chances to draft good players is never a bad thing. So I can't blame them if that's the route that they take in order to accumulate more picks, more chances to draft players, more chances to add to the roster. The problem when they failed at this strategy isn't deploying the strategy. It's not the concept of trading back that's the problem. It's the players that they've taken with those picks that haven't worked out, or the evaluation process that's been bad or gone wrong. That's been the issue. And again, if you don't trust Andrew Berry with that, I get it. But if you get stuck in your head that like they can't trade back because there's this one guy here that they absolutely have to take, that just eliminates the thought process that there could be other players that are good and valuable to the team that they could get, and that still could be on the board if they trade back, and that they could get those guys and still maximize the value of the pick by getting future capital in return. Maybe it doesn't happen. You at this point, if you're a loyal listener of the show, you know that I'm a trade back guy specifically this year. Maybe other years not so much, but this year I feel like that's probably a fair route to take given the state of this draft class, what we know about it. It's kind of a down, weaker year just in general. And given where the Browns are on the board, I'm wide open to the idea of trading back, and as Andrew Berry says, trying to maximize the value of that pick. And if you're against it, or there's a player you do really want, I can understand that. But to be so close-minded that you don't understand why it matters, or you think it's just like stop with the fantasy football and the draft pick trading and moving back all the time. Like moving back isn't about like we're not drafting good players. It's about, again, finding the ultimate value in, can we still get a really good player with the pick that we're going to get, and also get future draft capital that helps us down the line. And I don't need to rehash that whole conversation because I know what it turns into. Yes, if you're getting future draft capital for 2027, it's most likely to set yourself up to potentially look at the quarterback class next year. And I know people have their various takes on that, who the quarterback should be, if this guy's going to work out, if that guy's going to work out, if it's Shador, if it's Deshaun, if it's whoever. And they don't necessarily think they should be looking at the quarterback class. But I've continued to say, if Shador pans out, guess what? You just have extra capital next year to continue bolstering the roster around him. And you added multiple players this year that you can feel good about. There's actually a trade that I executed trading back from 6 in our Locked On mock draft. I don't want to give it away yet because that's a whole entity and content thing of its own. But I think Browns fans should be excited about the trade I executed in this mock draft that we do here at the network and the players that I came away with. I'm excited when we unveil it to show you what I did. But it's not this scary monster that you have to be afraid of when it comes to trading back. And it's not something that should be making you, that should invoke so much anger in people that they're so against it. It's not fantasy football. It's a pretty common practice in the NFL. The key, of course, is that the person calling the shots gets the picks right. And again, if you don't trust Andrew Berry with that, fine. But trading back is a legitimate and sensible and honestly smart teams do it. Strategy for teams to deploy. You just got to get the picks right after it. And maybe that's easier said than done. But I have no problem with trading back, and people shouldn't be so triggered by the idea of it that they're against it, even if there's a guy that you maybe like a lot for them potentially at 6 overall. Speaking of guys that you like a lot or don't like a lot, there's one receiver that I think I'm staying away from. Probably wouldn't be a pick that you'd make until the 20s when you're on the clock at 24 if you're the Browns. But there's just one receiver that I'm out on at this point as far as the first round goes. I'll explain who coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is, well, a lot. Trying to book an appointment, that's not the most convenient. Sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded right to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve. Well, you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. Life is so much easier when you know an expert is taking care of it for you. It's off your plate. It's out of sight. It's out of mind. You just got to sign off on it, and you're good to go for your 2025 tax year. It's a relief of walking in, meeting a real person, walking out knowing your taxes are being handled correctly. Head to TurboTax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. All right, so there's a lot. I've been very open about a lot in this draft. I've been very open about a lot of these receivers. I've talked a lot about how the drop off from a Carnell Tate at 6 to that next kind of tier of receivers, and maybe specifically like Omar Cooper and Denzel Boston, even a Bell like on day 2. I don't think it's so vast that you have to take a wide receiver super early. And so I'm open to waiting on that and getting one in the 24 range or we're in the 20s if that's how the board sort of falls your way. But at the same time, there is one receiver that I've seen mocked to the Browns quite a bit, both early on in this process and of late, that I think I'm against taking, and it's Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M. Here's the thing: there's a lot to like about Casey Concepcion. In terms of, for example, he is near the top of the class when it comes to like separation rate with single coverage, man coverage, like 60%. Like he gets open, he makes plays. And there's certainly some positives there. He's quick. He kind of has that gadget ability to him where you can use him in a number of ways. And honestly, while I'm sitting here saying I wouldn't draft him, some of these things I'm rattling off are reasons why I almost think Todd Monken might like him, because he can use a player like that in a number of different ways. He's versatile. He's a weapon. And I think he might like that. So maybe they still take him anyway. And I'm not saying I'm an expert here. I'm not a GM. But I have wondered about that, about how he fits and whether or not he's the right player for this team. Maybe for those reasons I said he is. But for me, there's some concerns in terms of his career catch rate only being 63.5%, his contested catch conversion rate being just 45.5%, and him having a drop rate that's 9.3% in college. Those numbers are near the bottom of this class. And I think about the state of this Browns wide receiver room, Listen, there's plenty of receivers who in college didn't have the best hands and dropped passes and all these different things, and then still go on to have great careers. And so I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's maybe a risk I'm not willing to take for the Browns right now, especially considering where this wide receiver room is at. I mean, one of the biggest issues this team had last year was guys not being able to hold on to the football, guys dropping passes. It was an epidemic of errors and mistakes and costly drops. Jerry Jeudy may be chief among them. You need somebody you know is sure-handed and who can make those plays for you. I also think like the style of receiver he is, the Browns need like a true X outside receiver that they can count on. Yes, a slot guy would be nice. Part of the reason I like Omar Cooper Jr. is he can do both, but him in the slot does entice me, and even Casey Concepcion in the slot does entice me. But I just think there's better receivers out there in this class and on this board. I'd have Concepcion probably lower than most. The tape looks good in spots, but those figures scare me. And so I would take a number of guys before I would take him. And so if it gets down to it where it's like he's the guy on the board at 24, I might honestly, like I would take Denzel Boston over him, who's now maybe being mocked late first round into early second round. I would take clearly Omar Cooper Jr. over him. I'd take all the normal guys, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate. I would take Chris Bell. I would consider Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama ahead of him. I am not the biggest fan of Casey Concepcion in terms of what he brings to the table, the numbers, the drop rate, some of those miscues. This is a Browns receiving room that needs to get sure-handed players that they know are going to make plays for them and that they know can just kind of plug and play, and there's not, that can be impactful immediately. I just don't think they can afford to take a guy that has some of those questions when it comes to drops and things. So I'm not. He's the one receiver in the first round that I'm probably the most out on, and I'm open-minded to pretty much anybody. And again, if it's the mid-20s and he's still on the board, I don't know if I want to take him. I truly don't. It's a dilemma for me. I know a lot of other people like him. I'm not the biggest fan, and I think that the Browns do need to think about that when they think about what they need at the wide receiver room and where they're coming from. Adding another guy that's had some of those issues into a group that had a lot of those issues last year just doesn't seem productive to me to turning around that group as a whole and getting it back on track and providing somebody like Shedeur Sanders, for example, at quarterback with the right weapons to get this offense trending in the right direction and having success. Just my feel on it. Maybe you like Casey Concepcion. Tell me I'm wrong in the comments section here at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Plus, if you like what you heard, hit the subscribe button and make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. Don't forget about the Everyday Club. Again, your chance to get the show ad-free on the audio side, plus access to a members-only Discord channel. Go to LockedOnBrowns.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. Also, keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs and Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being every day at the Locked On Podcast Network. Catch you next time, Cleveland.